Phoenix Suns took a step backward on Sunday night, losing at home to the Memphis Grizzlies. On today's episode of Locked On Suns, we break down the stretch that really tells the story of the game beyond the fourth quarter collapse and why teams just don't seem to respect the Suns as an opponent. Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Monday. We are free and available everywhere, so if you have not already, hit follow or subscribe. Get a new show in your feed each and every Monday through Friday. Become an everydayer. Get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right along with me all season long. Today's show brought to you by Gametime, the best place to buy any ticket. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. We have a lot to get to today. The Suns-Grizzlies game was just too big for me to not do a show on. Appreciate your patience being a little later with the episode than normal. Celebrated my little sister's 18th birthday, so happy birthday. A little belatedly to Claire. We went out to dinner and all that. During the game, I was able to catch the end of it and then rewatch the whole thing Monday and now have my thoughts in order for all of you. Obviously, a loss. Final score 121-115 at home. Kevin Durant returns. The big three get another game together, and yet with no Ja Morant on the other side, the Suns still lose. So, the fourth quarter collapse is going to get a lot of attention, and rightly so. The Grizzlies nearly doubled Phoenix up in that quarter, and we've seen that movie a million times this season. But rather than go on another rant about that and bore you all, what I think makes the most sense is to tell you the stretch I actually think decided this game, and it was not in the fourth quarter. It was during the third quarter, and while the Suns would end up with about 30 seconds to go, going up 13 in the third quarter, which was their biggest lead of the game, and set them up for the collapse that they went through in the fourth. The third quarter, I think, takes me to the takeaway that I have from this game, which I will get to in the next segment. But it is just so... It's a perfect example of how even with the Suns' advantages sort of going their way, they still are not able to get the job done, all right? At the 8-minute and 50-second mark of the third, Jaren Jackson picks up his fourth foul. Happens with him a lot, right? Foul trouble. And he goes to the bench. The Suns are up 5 points at that point. After a few minutes... minute and a half or so, about 7 minutes left to go in the game, in the third, Memphis calls a timeout. Or Phoenix. There is a timeout. At that moment, the score is 80-73. What followed over the next 2.5 minutes was a 10-3 Grizzlies run in which all three of the Suns' big three are on the court. And only Desmond Bane is on the court between obviously the two stars, but really if you want to say three and just remind yourself once again that Ja Morant was not playing in this game. and that the Grizzlies had to bench their starting center in this one because it just wasn't working. They bailed on Xavier Tillman early. He only played 3 minutes. That's the level of adjustment that Memphis was already at. And the lineup they had out there was Bane, Smart, Kennard, Vince Williams, and Bismack Biyombo. One of the only units you could put together on a competitive team in the West that is as small as the Suns' best lineups tend to be. And in this case, the Suns' best lineups were not small because Durant was actually playing. So 2 minutes and 30 seconds, 10-3 run, and the score ends up tied at 83. And within this stretch, you saw Marcus Smart be assertive, driving downhill. I believe that he made a shot in this stretch, as did, he also generated a Desmond Bane 3 on the wing. Both were the result of drive and kick opportunities from Smart, or driving opportunities from him just getting downhill, trying to make something happen. I believe in this stretch, you had a handful of missed shots by the Suns' best players where you live with it, sure, but you don't see the same level of assertiveness to get downhill that Memphis had. Overall, if you look at the run from the minute Jaren went down, it is a 16-11 run. But again, within that, a 10-3 run, and within that, an 8-0 run was in here as well. Those are just not moments that should ever happen when the Suns have all 3 of their stars on the court, and really any opponent is out there. You should not be in a situation where foul trouble, injuries, all mounting against that opponent, and somehow you're the team falling behind. And again, it didn't end up becoming a Grizzlies lead because the Suns got their act together by the end of this quarter, but only barely, because as soon as the fourth quarter started, Memphis picked up right where it left off. The final thing we saw in this stretch that I think is the moment of the game is within the aggressiveness from Smart, within the transition 3 that Luke Kennard hit here, you saw a level of not only a lack of fear toward the Suns that Memphis demonstrated, but frankly, a lack of respect for the Suns. I'll tell you what I mean by that next and how we saw it play out as the Suns did cough up this lead. But first, today's show brought to you by Gametime. I think we can all speak, if we live in Arizona, live in Phoenix, near a big city, trying to get tickets, that the experience can be quite frustrating on many of the platforms that you may use. But you shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event, and that's why Gametime is here to help. What I love, the 2 things that I love the most about Gametime, that truly makes me call it the best place to buy any ticket: view from your seat within the app. So you know what your vantage point is going to be from where you are where you will be sitting with the ticket you purchase immediately on the front end. And the other part is Gametime has a lot of financial protections for you. They have a lowest price guarantee. They have an event cancellation protection, as well as something like job loss protection that really nobody else is doing. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money. Deals right up to the start of the event. Exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on all sorts of sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Zone deals where you pick the section and Gametime picks your seat if you're not too picky and they give you extra savings on those offers. And the game time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. So if you find tickets somewhere else in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Say our bad, get you money to make it right, and send you on your way. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. That's LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, let's keep it rolling here. The Phoenix Suns lost to the Memphis Grizzlies. I told you why the third quarter to me is particularly frustrating and maybe even more indicative of what's the problem here than the fourth quarter was, even though the fourth quarter is exhausting. We've seen, the bad transition defense, the turnovers. I happen to think those things are effort. And so maybe if you wonder why I don't harp on them enough, or it doesn't feel like I'm maybe noticing, I'm noticing. But there's only so much groveling we can all do toward professional athletes, veterans, most of them, to put in the requisite amount of effort to not make boneheaded decisions, to execute, and everything else. And there's plenty of that to go around. I've done it before. I'll do it again. But in some cases, the problems are different and maybe more concerning even than that. I talked in the last segment about respect and fear. Teams certainly aren't afraid of the Suns right now. They're 19-17. They're 500 at home. They're actually playing a team who has a similarly strange home-road split situation. Somehow the Memphis Grizzlies are 10-10 away on the road and 3-13 at home. So I guess some fan bases have it even worse than Phoenix in the NBA this season, and Memphis is one, but they're not afraid, and they shouldn't be. What they also are not, that is more serious, is they don't really respect the Suns. And what I mean by that is a few things. If you feel like the Suns get road team calls at Footprint Center, I think you're absolutely right. The Suns get the wrong end of a lot of calls against non-star players in their home building the past couple of seasons, not just this year, than I can remember. And that is not me being a homer, complaining about the refs, whatever. That is me criticizing the team, because that is earned. And teams, opponents that come into Footprint Center feel emboldened to play physically, to be the initiators of contact, be the tone setters of the game, because they don't seem to think that the Suns are going to push back or fight back or do much of anything to change the tide of the game. And so the game is, from a physicality and intensity standpoint, that is determined by the opponent most nights, even when the Suns are at home. That is one way we see the respect not be there. Teams also, this season, more of a this year thing, are not afraid to run, even if it might feel a little out of control at times, and look for transition opportunities every chance they get, because they don't respect the Suns' ability to do anything about it. What I would also say is you just don't see, right? Like, let me give an example from the other vantage point first before I talk about the opponents. Suns fans, any of you who watch these games, you know, like if Ja had played last night, perfect example, that the Suns are going to most likely want to counter that with Josh Okogie playing more, right? You could come up with any number of examples. There have been times when the Suns have played, extra big lineups to counter those types of teams and whatever. Every team does that, of course. I'm not saying they don't, but last night, Memphis, they didn't really care much who was on the court for the Suns. Like I just mentioned, this lineup that made the third quarter run had Smart. Okay, that's a defender. But other than that, Bane, Kennard, Vince Williams, Bismack Biyombo. Who's guarding Kevin Durant in that grouping, right? You only have one great point of attack defender. You have Booker and Beal on the other side. Grizzlies said, all right, we like those odds. Give it to us. And it worked. The Suns don't demand that you adjust to them. And right now, they can, they should. There's clear pathways to exerting what makes them a special roster on a night-to-night basis and making teams adjust. But that's not happening right now. And so teams don't have to respect that, and they don't have to respect the team. They can play their game, bring an intensity and physicality that they don't have any reason to believe will be matched by the Suns, and get calls, play as fast as they want, really just not face any resistance to anything. And things are most likely going to work out for them doing that. And we saw that again last night. I think that the last part of how this game illustrated my point about how teams are not respecting the Suns, which is, it's a pretty big claim. I don't mean that on an individual level. I don't mean that people walk into Footprint Center or any road game that the Suns are playing in and specifically to Booker or Beal or Durant or Vogel or anybody, person to person, not respect them as competitors. But as a team, as a group, as a culture, as an organization, I don't think it's there. And Vince Williams is a great example of why as well. Vince Williams is the guy who filled in admirably during Ja Morant's absence, has now been moved back to the bench, even in last night's game when Ja didn't play, but ended up playing 37 minutes. Tom Leander on the broadcast called him the surprise of the night or something like that on the broadcast, and I don't agree. Vince Williams, he's been doing this. He's not the biggest name, but if you watched Memphis at all, even if you watched Memphis in the couple of nationally televised games when Ja first came back, he's a guy who absolutely plays with the level of hustle, always seems to, just get involved defensively, offensively, loose balls, whatever, plays bigger than he is. Made 3 of his 4 threes and had 4 offensive rebounds against the Suns, 2 blocks. The Suns have nobody like that. You could make the case Josh Okogie is that, and he is to a degree, but he's not playable enough on the offensive end to consistently make that type of impact. It's hit or miss with him. Is his three-point shot going in? Is his confidence there? If the answer to either one of those questions is no, then you just turn the page because it's not going to be an Okogie night. And of course, I'm sure Vince Williams has games like that too. I'm not trying to make him into an all-star just to prove my point. But when we're talking about respect, can talk about the stars, can talk about the fouls and the pace and the rotation and lineups and matchups and all the things I've mentioned already, and those are there. But Is there any Suns role player outside of Grayson Allen who you think teams are respecting right now? Even Yusuf Nurkic. And he had a solid enough game. I thought they used him as a post passer and high post passer in a really nice way in this game. He helped get Jaren in foul trouble. He had 6 offensive rebounds. Is anybody scared of Yusuf Nurkic? Respecting of Yusuf Nurkic? Worrying about Yusuf Nurkic? No, I don't think so. Metu, Eubanks, Bates Diop, Lee, all the guys who played in this game. Maybe Eric Gordon. He didn't play, so I guess it's an easy thing to say now. Okay, Eric Gordon, you got to guard him. So are we up to 5 guys? There's no Vince Williams on this roster. There hasn't been in James Jones' entire tenure. Those guys are free to be claimed and grabbed and developed every year across the whole league by anybody. Vince Williams was, I believe, either a second-round pick or undrafted. Came into the season as a two-way player. Look what he did. Look what he's continued to do. That's not some built-in advantage that the Memphis Grizzlies had. It's not a number 1 overall pick that they got because they sucked the previous season. It's a guy that they went out, scouted, signed, developed, put in a position to succeed, and got the fruits of that effort and his work ethic, clearly. Suns don't have anybody like that. There's nobody on this Suns team that comes off the bench or plays a smaller role that might not be on the scouting report, but everybody on the court is aware, watch out. There's no watch out guy on the Suns. And until those things change, we can talk about scheme and all the rest, all that we want. That's not, you don't say that about championship teams. Let's get to the box score oddity of the night, focused on Jaren Jackson and his impact on a few aspects of what the Suns were able to do on the offensive end. First, today's show brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Here's the deal. The NFL season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 straight to your account in bonus bets, win or lose. You don't even have to nail your bet in order to get the bonus dollars into your account. I'm looking at Tuesday night's NBA odds. The Los Angeles Clippers are 6.5-point favorites at home against the Suns this is Monday night, on the second night of a back-to-back for Phoenix. What I like there, though, if you're listening to this before tip-off of that game, is the over-under of total points at 230. I think that is a nice one, but of course there's plenty all across FanDuel. Live game, same-game parlays, creative bets in the Explore tab that you might not otherwise have seen, as well as the Parlay Hub, where users can share their parlays and what's popular around the app worldwide. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL and the NBA. Alrighty, we are closing it out. And let's get to, let's start a little bit less negative, which is the free throw attempts and the impact that Jaren Jackson Jr. had on the game, despite having 5 fouls and despite our impression of him as somebody who doesn't do well playing center. He certainly did in this game, played well. And while, yes, okay, he had 5 fouls, he only had 1 block, you can tell that the Suns were worried about him, conscious of his whereabouts on the court, by how they attempted, I would say, I'm going to double check myself, look at the shot chart here, but it felt like a lot more floaters than layups, And they did have 62 points in the paint. It can be a little hard on these shot charts even to look at specific individual attempts, but I see like 6 misses at the basket. I can get the at the rim numbers actually here as I talk. But more than that, the Suns only got to the line 22 times. And to me, It might sound counterintuitive, but a handful of Jaren's fouls were non-shooting. And even if maybe, let's say, all of them were shooting. I don't think they were. But let's say they were. It doesn't really matter when that's still only 5. The point is, by the Suns kind of hesitating to go all the way to the basket, they drew less contact. They gave themselves fewer opportunities to make the refs call something. And as a result, they got to the line less. So you had a game in which Desmond Bane, all 6'4" of them, got to the line the same amount as any of the Suns' most heavy free throw shooters tonight. Jaren Jackson got to the line as often as Bradley Beal did. Marcus Smart got to the line as often as Devin Booker did. Kevin Durant only attempted 1 free throw. Nurkic, 3 free throws. Even Okogie, who in the previous game against Miami did a pretty good job of getting to the line, only 2 in 14 minutes. I have their at-rim numbers, and I was correct. The Suns were very solid on floaters, where they shot 12 of 23, but on shots at the rim, they were only 22 of 41, which would put them around the 10th percentile of all NBA games this year. Very, very bad. They were fouled 4 times at the rim, but honestly, I'll take that as a W for what I'm saying, because when they got there, they got fouled more often than Memphis, but they didn't get there enough. And they didn't convert them when they did, right? So that to me is a problem. And even if you want to extend it past Jaren, when Bismack Biyombo's in there, test him. Make him foul you. Maybe he'll get a couple blocks on you, but I'd rather try it than not, you know? Just felt like a game where they could have done more of that, and I think the free throw discrepancy where the Suns walk into most games with an advantage there against a Ja Morant-less Grizzlies team, they were out free throwed. That shouldn't be happening. The other thing that shouldn't be happening is the three-pointers, right? And we could talk about this all day, but the bottom line is it is a tightrope walk for the Suns offense. Without a true point guard, and with 3 stars all trying to get comfortable, and with the message clearly being that everybody has a green light, you're going to run into some nights where the shot distribution may be a little funky. You can try to poke holes in things. You can try to be revisionist history about it and take issue with this or that. And that's easy to do, especially after a loss. So while I do try to avoid doing that, the reason it is such a tightrope walk is there has to be a point at which the best players say, F that, let me get mine. And that also has to be done in an efficient way without rubbing anybody the wrong way, stepping on anybody's toes, finding a balance, finding a happy, literally happy, joyful, middle ground where everybody is involved and feels committed, but where you do not have Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal taking 1 3-pointer each. Now, Durant still took 23 shots. A lot of those were sort of when the game was starting to get out of hand, so I think he definitely could have and should have become involved earlier on. I wrote it down here. I feel like the first set in which Durant initiated in the fourth quarter when the game was starting to slip away was at the 7-minute and 30-second mark after the Suns were already down 2. So they went into the quarter up a bunch. They were already down 2 by the time Durant finally initiated something. So these are all part of the problem. The offense clicked for large segments of this game, especially the first half and even the end of the third quarter. All of the Suns stars had 5+ assists, and even Nurkic did. Good, all good signs. But when at the end of the day, Durant and Beal both shoot below 50% from the field, only get to the line a combined 5 times and only attempt a 3-pointer each, that's just not going to be what you want to make this trio the best that they can possibly be consistently. So easy for me to sit here and look at the box score afterward and point to all the things that could have and should have and would have, but at the same time, that whole distribution and shot diet in this game, that can't be a pattern. So I don't think it will be, but it's part of why they lost. Last but not least, young forward breakout watch, and I'll make it quick. Jase Metu, this game is why he doesn't play a bigger role consistently. Okay? This game is why he, there's a world in which Jase Metu sticks with his starting spot, even with how hot Grayson Allen has been from deep and Durant returning and everything else. There is a world where that happens, where Durant theoretically plays, the 3. Metu is out there as a 2-way, big, athletic role player. Not hard to imagine at all. They need what he brings, but he doesn't bring it every night. And, Eddie Johnson pointed it out on the broadcast. His jumper form wasn't consistent in this game. He consistently makes defensive mistakes. He seems to be in his head a little bit on offense. His best games come when he scores, when he's involved on offense. He's going to have plenty of games where he, plays the passing lanes. He's going to be good for one of those every night, a breakaway dunk, because he has the IQ to read those plays and the athleticism to finish them off. But this type of game is why it's not all the time. Why he's not playing 20 minutes a night, 25 minutes a night, 30 minutes a night. Why he's at this point in his career, frankly, not to get too ahead of myself and be, overly harsh. But they desperately need what he brings. They're begging for him to give it to them on a nightly basis, and he has not done that. Let's hope that changes. Sincerely, truly hope that changes. Because if you're getting the version of Metu we saw when he scored 1 million points a few weeks back, or when he's really, really on it defensively, or even as a passer, he can have some great moments. If all those things consistently come, this team's a lot better. They need that. So I hope it happens. But that'll wrap us up for the day. The Clippers game's on Monday night. Check back here for a recap of that game with Brandon Duenas. We will be back late after that buzzer, and I will talk to you guys all then.